Hi, in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at the Emacs app launcher. This is a package that will launch graphical applications by opening their desktop files in Emacs, and it uses code from the council package. Interestingly, one of the contributors is David Wilson from System Crafters. So what I'm going to do is actually go through and show you how to install this and use it. So the first thing is this package isn't in Melpa, so you can't install it with package install as you would normally. If you were using straight or use package, you can use these bits of code to install it. But I'm not using any of those, so I'm going to manually install this by downloading the file and putting it in my Lisp directory and enabling it. So what we're going to do is come across the app launcher.el, come across to raw, and save the file. We've saved that to our downloads directory and switch back to Emacs. And what we're going to do is come into our .config Emacs Lisp directory. And if you don't have a Lisp directory already, create it. And then what we're going to do is move that package that we downloaded into this directory. So there you go, we've got the app launcher.el in our .config Emacs Lisp directory. What we need to do now is actually configure Emacs to look in that Lisp directory to load the EL packages and also configure the package. So the first thing that I'm going to do is come across to config Emacs early init, and in this file what I have is this section down here. Let me just increase the file size so you can see it. Add to list, load path, ~.config Emacs Lisp. And what that's going to do is tell Emacs to look in that directory for packages that we've manually installed. So that's the first step, to load the Lisp directory. The next step is to actually configure the package. So config Emacs init.el, and all we need to do is require app launcher. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually just going to kill Emacs and restart it, because I've configured the Lisp directory and I just want to make sure everything's all working. Okay, so first of all, what I want to do before I show you the app launcher is come across to the desktop and show you the GNOME application launcher. So the problem with this is it's massive. Every time you search for something, it takes you out of what you're doing and brings up this huge interface. But what I wanted to show you is I have packages that are installed via apt using the package manager, snaps. So I have Firefox and Chromium installed as snaps. Then I have OBS Studio and RetroArch installed with Flatpak. And I also use nixpkgs, which is a package manager that works on any Linux distribution and Mac as well, that allows you to install the latest version of software in an isolated environment. So I use this to install the latest version of Emacs. So I'm running Emacs 30 on Ubuntu 22.04. Now the reason I'm mentioning all this is if I come back across here, what I've done is made a list of the location of desktop entries, .desktop files on your system that are installed by the package manager, by Snap, Flatpak and nixpkgs. And the reason for this is because application launchers have to look in these directories to actually find the desktop files to launch the application. So if you're using a regular package manager like apt or Pacman or whatever, all your desktop files for the system will go in user share applications. You also have a user directory in .local share applications as well that you can add your desktop files to. And this is useful because you can actually override a desktop file that's in user share applications by putting it in local share applications and making changes to the desktop file to tweak it to do something you want. Now, the snap directory on the system, if you're using Ubuntu and you're using snaps, is going to be varlib snapd desktop applications. So that's where the snap files go. Flatpak files, there are two ways to install it. You can install something to the system directory or the user directory. So Flatpak will install stuff to varlib flatpak export share applications, but you also have a local user directory if you use the flatpak -- user option, and it installed desktop files to local share flatpak export share applications. Now, nixpkgs, which is the package manager I use with Home Manager, the setup I use, it actually installs desktop files into Nix profile share applications. So that's a list of all the locations for the desktop files for different package managers, or call them what you will. So what I'm going to do now is actually switch back to Emacs here and run the package that we've just installed. So we haven't bound it to a keyboard shortcut yet, so I'm going to run meta-x app launcher run app. And so now when I do this, what happens is I get a list of desktop entries that I can launch using this mode. And so the reason I went through and showed you the different package managers and the different desktop locations is to actually show you that it's actually picking up all those files. So as you can see here, Handbrake, this was installed with nixpkgs, I think. I can just double check. So I can actually check that by looking at my nixpkgs config, and I think I had Handbrake in there. Yeah, so this is my Home Manager config for nixpkgs, and you can see here this is a list of applications that I'm actually installing with nixpkgs, and you can see Handbrake, gparted, Emacs, and various other things. Emacs is actually listed up here, but what I wanted to show you is if I run App Launcher again, you can see Handbrake is being picked up. Meld, so Meld, give that a sec. Meld, that's being picked up. I think that's nixpkgs. App Launcher, Run App. Firefox. Is this because I've got Firefox open? I'm not sure if maybe it's not. See, I've got two desktop entries for Firefox. One which is this one here. You can see Firefox web browser VPN. Let me see if Chromium's coming up. Chromium, browser Chromium. We need to run App Launcher. Chromium. Yeah, Chromium's showing up. Is it going to open? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's opened up. Interestingly, Firefox wasn't opening up, and I'm guessing that's because the application's already open or something. I can quit Firefox and try it again. As you can see, App Launcher, Run App. You get a list of all these down here. You can use the arrow keys to move up and down, so you can see all the. So you can see here RetroArch is showing up, and that again was installed using Flatpak. So Flatpak applications are showing up, nixpkgs applications are showing up, Snap applications, as well as the standard applications. Let's see if Emacs shows up. So Emacs client. So I've noticed there was a bug report saying that if you tried to launch Emacs client from within this, it wouldn't work. So I won't do that just in case it doesn't. But let's launch the calculator. Okay, App Launcher, settings, so that's going to be the system settings there. So you can see, absolutely great. It's working perfectly with all these different desktop entry locations. So it's picking up the system, the files in user share applications, my user applications directory. It's picking up the snaps. It's picking up the flatpak as well, and it's also picking up the nixpkgs entries. So what I thought I'd do is actually have a look at how this is actually working. So let me take it back to this page. It's easier to look at. So what this is doing is it's using the XDG package. So if I come across here, this is the XDG package here, and what this does is this sets up the XDG directory location. So XDG is a specification where certain directories and files should exist, and what this basically does is this sort of maps out this specification in this package file. So what we've got here is directory home, cache home, data home, state home, the runtime directory, the config directory. And if I come through to the app launcher, what you'll see here is this section here, app launcher, app directories, mapcar lambda directory, expand file name, applications, dir, xdg data home, and xdg data directory. So we search for xdg data home, xdg data, one right here. So this is the function in the xdg file, and what it's doing here is actually saying, okay, this is the location for applications. And what you'll see here is just saying local share, and what you'll notice in this section here is it's saying expand file name, applications directory. So what it's doing is the path, as you can see here, local share, the actual path is local share applications, but what it's doing is it's just taking the local share and then it's looking for the applications here. So it's looking for the XDG data home and the XDG data directories. So XDG data directories, XDG data directories. So this is the next section. This is the system path here. You can see user local share. So again, the system path for desktop entries would be user local share applications. But as you can see here, it's just saying user local share. But in this section here, it's saying expand file name. So looking for user local share applications. So that's how it's actually searching for the applications. And one thing I thought, there's a thing in here, XDG thumbnail URL. So it looks like in this XDG EL file, the XDG specifications, is there's a way to actually get the icon for the desktop file. So as you can see, when I run the GNOME application launcher, these are all the desktop icons associated with the desktop file. So it does look like there's a way in this file to actually get the icons, but that actually hasn't been implemented. If I come across here and come across to the issues, two things. One, icon support. It'd be really cool if this tool could support application icons. It looks possible using completion metadate get, saying a different method. I'm happy to tackle this sometime in the future if you're interested, although I can't say why, and that was like a year or so ago. So that's why there's no icons at present. And this one here, open any app except Emacs client. Expected behavior on selection of Emacs from menu. Launch new Emacs client frame. Actual behavior, Emacs client appears to be a valid selection in completion menu. Upon selection, however, minibuffer closes without any action. So it sounds like there may be a bug with launching Emacs client from the application launcher. So I just thought I'd point that out because that was one issue I came across. So absolutely great. So what we can do is we can replace this horrendous, egregious interface that we use to search for things with something much nicer in Emacs. So app launcher, run app, and we'll get that. So what I would want to do is actually bind this to a keyboard shortcut, obviously, so I don't have to keep typing meta-x. And you'll get this application launcher come up in Emacs so that you can launch applications. However, there's one issue. This works fine if you're in Emacs. So if you're perhaps using EXWM, which is the Emacs sort of window manager thing, so basically everything's done through Emacs, that'd be fine. But let me just have some tea. Unless you're actually focused on Emacs here, you can't run the application launcher. So, if I'm in Firefox, what I want to be able to do is bring up, press a keyboard shortcut, not have this interface come up, but have a Emacs frame come up with the app launcher buffer selected, so that I can search for an application and launch it. And the behavior I'd want is that once I've submitted the query to launch something, that the application launcher hides itself, basically. So the next step is, how do you create a frame for the application launcher? I was playing around, see if I've actually got the code here, frames. Let's see if I can. Okay, so yeah, I was playing around with some code to actually create a frame. So can I get this to evaluate? Yeah, okay, so that's what I was working on. How to create a Emacs frame that pops up. And what you'll notice, a couple of interesting things about this frame that has appeared. There's no title bar. Okay, there's no title bar, and there's no mode line. So let me just close this. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is come through this chunk of code that I've just been sort of working on, and this is something I've pinched off someone and tweaked. And what they were doing is trying to create an Alfred clone using Emacs. Alfred is an application launcher for Mac that has got a sort of a clone on Linux called Albert, which uses Qt framework, and I think it's written in C. But I tried it and it was really clunky and ugly, and I just didn't like it. Okay, so let's have a look at this bit of code here. What we're doing is saying with current buffer, get buffer, create scratch, let frame, make frame, and we're giving the frame a name. What we're doing is, first of all, we're saying auto raise T, and what this does is this focuses the frame so that it's the frontmost application, and that it has focus so that we can type into it, because that's what we want to do. The next thing we're doing is setting full screen to none, because I have all my frames by default open full screen. So to disable that, what we do is full screen .0, so that set to not be full screen. The next one down here is undecorated .t. Now if I maximize this, what you'll see here is this is the Emacs client, and it is a GTK. It's a GTK application, and it has a frame up here. Is that it? The frame has a title bar. Okay, so the undecorated option will actually remove the title bar, because we don't want we kind of don't want a GTK sort of title bar coming up in our sort of application launcher that we're going to sort of try and build. Next thing is we've got height and width, toolbar lines, menu bar lines set to 0. This was the other thing that I was actually wanting to mention. You can position windows with Emacs, so you can actually you can set the width and the height, and you can actually set the position where the windows should open in a window manager. But this is GNOME, and the issue with GNOME is you don't have any control where the window is going to open. So what I'm going to do is come across to I think it's tweaks, GNOME tweaks. I mean, I could open this through the thingy, but yeah. Okay, so where was it? There's a section, I think it's in GNOME tweaks somewhere, that actually sets the position of Windows. Is it Windows title bar? Okay, here. Under Windows, in GNOME tweaks, under Windows, by default on GNOME, what happens is when you open an application, if I turn this off, you'll see. So if let me just open the settings. You'll see now I've turned that off. By default on GNOME, what happens is applications will always open in the top left window like this. If you use GNOME tweaks, what you can do is enable the option center new windows. So if I now open the application, it's centered. So that's the issue on GNOME, is that by default it's going to open the top left, but you really want to set it to open in the middle, centered. So where's that come up here? Oh yeah, I didn't kill that frame. Okay, so there we go. Didn't kill the frame. So yeah, that's the issue on GNOME, is that you can't, you don't have any control using Emacs about where the window is going to be actually positioned. It's determined by GNOME. It's either going to be in the top left, or if you've enabled the setting in GNOME tweaks, it's going to be in the center. So that's not too much of an issue, because that's where we actually, even though on GNOME up here it's coming up right up here, application launchers like Spotlight or Alfred on the Mac, they will typically open with a window centered in the middle of the screen. So that's not too much of an issue, but that's just basically to show you that these options for controlling the placement won't work on GNOME. They may work on a desktop manager like Xmonad or i3 or something like that. And some of these options here, you disable the vertical scroll bars, and finally disable the mode line format. So as you can see, when I evaluate this, what I'm getting here is a window coming up. So the idea is to create a frame that comes up in the middle of the screen, and that will automatically open the app launcher buffer and be focused, so that we can just start typing in it and launch an application. So if I run app launcher here, so what we want is something like this, and obviously what we need to do is actually adjust the size here. So I need to adjust the height and get this to automatically open the buffer like this, so that we can have a keyboard shortcut in GNOME. And the idea would be to launch Emacs client to create this frame and automatically open this buffer. And what we could do, basically what we can do, is we can actually create a .desktop file for that Emacs thing, or we can just put the code in to the GNOME settings where you can add keyboard shortcuts. So if I run calculator here, it'll open the calculator. But what I want is a way to automatically close the window after I've made a selection. So to close this, I'd run Control X50, and that's killed that frame. So if I try, let's try making the height and the, let's say, reduce the height to, say, what should we do, 12, and let's change the width to 50, and to see, launch that window again, and app launcher, yeah, you can see here it's cutting off the text. So what you need to do is actually figure out what the width would be. So I think we're going to need that, say 60. And as you can see here, the app launcher. So the other issue is how do you, you can see it's got this space above here. So what you need to figure out also is how to get this to run sort of maximized in this frame, as it were. So that's another sort of thing to actually work out. But as you can see here, it's still cutting off some of the text, so may need to make that smaller. But the idea is that you could then have a keyboard shortcut that you'd press when you're outside Emacs. It would bring up that window with the app launcher. You know, you just type, launches the application, and then the window's dismissed. So that's the idea. But just using it from within Emacs app launcher, you can see it's all working here. All the applications are showing up. So files, there we go. So that's really convenient if you're purely working in Emacs. But you know, if you're on another window, you want a way to actually be able to launch applications without having to sort of switch to Emacs to bring up the application launcher. So that's the Emacs application launcher or app launcher. And again, this is using code from the council package. And again, to install this, it's not actually on Melpa, so you can't install it with package install. If you're using straight or package or use package, you can install it like that, or you can install it manually, as I showed you, by downloading the app launcher.el, putting it in your Lisp directory, making sure you, let's just go back and go through that. So let me just come out of this frame code. So config Emacs early init. So you need to make sure you have add to list, load path, tilde /.config Emacs Lisp. You put your Lisp files in there. Then we come across to .config Emacs init.el, and all we did was require app launcher. So that's all you need to do. Really easy to get set up. And again, you'd probably want to actually bind this to a keyboard shortcut within Emacs. So there may be a case where you actually want to have two application launchers, one in Emacs like this, app launcher, so you can launch stuff, but also, as I said, you might want to have the application launcher as a frame that you can launch when you're not in Emacs. It will bring up a frame with the application launcher selected, type stuff, launch the application, and then dismiss the window. So I think that's a great alternative to the GNOME application launcher, which I really hate, because, as I say, the issue is, you know, you want to launch an application, you know, you're doing some work and you press this and boom, you get this horrendous interface, loads of space. I mean, I don't need to see that. The search is all the way up here. Yeah, you can see the applications and come through them and whatnot, but the other main issue with using this interface, I'm not capturing the second display, but if you have two displays, what happens is zooms out the second display as well. It puts it in, it puts the window up here, and all this brown gunk around it. So, for example, if you're watching a video and you use the application launcher, the window zooms out on the second display. And one thing I noticed was someone was saying, I've got kids and, I like to work and they watch stuff on my second display. And every time I launch an application, the flipping window is zooming in and out. So I was looking for an application launcher that was Wayland compatible, and easy to tweak. And I said there are, if I come across Arch Linux applications, app launcher. Let me just launcher, application launchers. So okay, so this is a list of application launchers on the Arch wiki, and I've gone through a lot of these. And a lot of these actually won't work on GNOME. So Albert had a look at this, really didn't like it, really clunky. Things like dmenu, they're not going to work. You've got old things like GNOME do. Kupfer, that does actually work on Wayland, but it's like a really old, ugly, in my opinion, application launcher, very dated. Rofi won't work. There's a Wayland fork for Rofi, but that only works on Sway and WL roots based things. It doesn't work on GNOME. You've got Woffy and Yoffy, and they're like really, really ugly in my opinion. So I've been through all this list of application launchers and I couldn't find anything to replace the GNOME application launcher. I looked at things like the Arc menu extension for GNOME, which has got a little application launch you can use, but I don't like using GNOME extensions because I've had issues with them before. If you do an upgrade and there's an issue with the extension, you actually won't even be able to boot into the GNOME desktop. So I think this is a absolutely brilliant application launcher for Emacs. Again, app launcher just comes up with all your stuff. Yeah, you could have icons, but really it's not necessary, to be honest. If you're using, I used to use things like, what's the one that runs up at the top? dmenu, the suckless thing. That doesn't have any icons. Rofi doesn't have icons by default, although you can enable them. So, although it'd be nice to have icons here for a bit of bling, it's not really completely necessary. And as I said, the main thing is that it actually picks up the desktop files for not only applications installed with apt, but with snap, with flatpak, and nixpkgs. So it's picking up all my applications. So handbrake, give it a sec. And what the other thing I want to mention is about the completion framework I'm using. I'm using, was it Vertigo and Marginalia and Orderless? And Orderless is an application that will actually match strings of text in this mini buffer in any order. So normally when you launch something, you actually have to sort of like, to narrow it down, you've got to type the whole thing like Chromium web browser. But with Orderless, you can just actually like type web, and it will actually, you can see here, it's actually matching Chromium web browser. One thing I want to do is actually, I'm going to quit Firefox here. So I'm going to close all these and actually see if the application launcher picks up Firefox. So application launcher, Firefox. So for some reason, it's not picking up the Firefox snap configuration file. So let's have a look at that. Let me just come back to the desktop file location. So desktop file, package manager, snap, varlib, applications. Okay. Okay, so we can see we've got here Firefox desktop. It's picking up Chromium, but for some reason it's not picking up Firefox. So app launcher, Chromium. It's picking up Chromium and that one, but not Firefox. Maybe it's not the way that it's named. But let me just try. You bastard. Let's just try copying that Firefox _Firefox to our local share applications and see if it then finds the file. So hang on. CP, yeah, bugger, where was it? Firefox to local share applications, app launcher, Firefox. Ah, there we go. Firefox. Now it's picking it up. Yeah, there we go. Another little tip that I'll mention is the latest version of Firefox actually has an issue. If I open a new tab here, you'll see that I have a background image that fades in. With the new version of Firefox 108, what happens is, as you can see, when I first launched the tab, it was blank. Previously, it would automatically display the image. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But as you see, when I open new tab, it's actually opening that image as well. So that's just another tip. If you're having issues with particular applications not showing up in the menu because, as I showed you, perhaps it's a snap and it's not for some reason actually searching there and finding the application, what you can simply do is copy the problematic desktop file to your local share applications directory, and then it will pick up the desktop file and launch the application. So that's getting that thing fixed and making sure Firefox opened. Now, the other thing that I want to try is typically with application launchers like Rofi, they'll be intelligent, and if you have Firefox open and you run Rofi and select Firefox, it will actually switch to that window and not open another instance of Firefox. So let's see if that's actually the case. So what I'll do is I'll launch. I'm just doing MetaX and typing Firefox, app launcher, Firefox, Firefox web browser. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that to the second workspace. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And what I'll do is I'll just so we can differentiate between the windows, I'll open the tab. What we'll do now is the same deal, application run Firefox, and my guessing is it's going to open a new instance of Firefox. Yeah, so so you can see it's not switching to that window. It's not automatically switching to the running application. It's going to open a new instance of the application, so you can't use it as a application switcher, as it were, to switch between running applications. It's just going to launch a new instance of the application that you select in the menu. So that's just some of the intricacies of the behavior of how this actually works, that I thought I'd sort of point out the difference between this and how something like Spotlight or Alfred or the GNOME application launcher would work. Let me just check one more thing. Application launcher, run app, let's say files. Okay, so as you can see here, what happened was after I launched the application, the little buffer actually automatically disappears. So that's great. So you actually launch the application, say files, bang, application launches, and that actually goes away. So it works absolutely perfectly from within Emacs as an application launcher, the behavior in terms of showing the window and automatically hiding it once you've submitted your query. But as I said, it would be nice, in my opinion, to be able to create a frame that had the same behavior that you could launch with a keyboard shortcut when you're outside of Emacs. So like when you're over here in Firefox, hit the keyboard shortcut, get a little window come up, launch an application, carry on with your work. Otherwise, the workflow is kind of going to be, you're in Firefox here, you want to launch something, you got to switch back to Emacs to actually launch the application. So that's one thing that could be improved, and I'll have a look at faffing around with some code to create a frame, and if anyone's got any tips on that, that'd be greatly appreciated, as my Lisp isn't very good at all. So yeah, I think this is really, really great. A really sort of useful addition to Emacs, and if you just use Emacs as a window manager as well, this would be a great package to actually launch applications. But it's also great if you're just using Emacs regularly on the desktop. So I need to create a keyboard shortcut to actually launch this, but I don't really think the icons are that big of a deal. But you use the arrow keys to sort of move up and down. I'd quite like to create a keyboard shortcut to could I use yeah, I've got evil key bindings using, so if I'm pressing control here and using J and K, and I can go up and down. So you could either use the keyboard, the arrow keys, or control J and K to actually, so I can like launch tweaks here. There we go, tweaks. Package. You can launch anything here, and so you can sort of narrow stuff down, and I would heavily recommend having a look at getting orderless set up. So I could launch RetroArch, or let's just try GIMP. See, GIMP's not showing up. So there were a couple of, I thought GIMP was showing up before. That's weird. Application launcher, GIMP. No. That's weird. So there are a couple of things that it's not picking up. Emacs client, yeah. So maybe a couple of the nixpkgs applications that is not actually picking up. But to be honest, I don't open those applications that very often, so it's not too much of an issue. And as said, the way to fix that, if they're not showing up, is to copy the .desktop file into your local share applications directory, and then it will pick them up. And it's not an issue having two versions of the same .desktop file. The one in the local share applications will take precedence over the others. So that's just a thing to mention. Let's see if the color picker is working. I think, yeah, color picker. I think that was a doodah. Let me just check what the applications I've got installed with Nix are. nixpkgs. The graphical applications. So Handbrake was showing up. Have I got GIMP? How did I install GIMP then? I thought I did install GIMP with. No, GIMP wasn't a nixpkgs package. It must be a No, it's not Snap. So it must be a standard application. User share applications. Yeah, gimp.desktop. But for some reason, it's not showing up. So let's just try fixing that again. So CP user share applications, GIMP to local share applications. Run it again. GIMP. Oh, forgot to do the app launcher. GIMP. Still not showing up. Now that is strange. So maybe there's an issue with that particular desktop file or something. So yeah, there may be a few little glitches, and I say this. I close all those windows. But yeah, it may be something to do with the desktop entries. So I don't know if it's that was a application in user share applications, but for some reason it's not picking it up. But during my sort of testing, I have found that it does pick stuff up in both your package manager, Snap, Flatpak, and nixpkgs, as I said. But there may be some issues sometimes, as I showed you, Firefox wasn't being picked up and GIMP's not being picked up. Maybe if I let's just try quitting Emacs and restarting it, pkl Emacs. Let's see if maybe something like you got to update the package database. Sometimes the desktop entries database. So app launcher, it's still not showing up. That's really weird. So yeah, for some reason it's not launch. It's not picking up GIMP. So I mean, there's there's always going to be some little oddity or bug or issue with some things, and it may just be maybe the format of the desktop file that is kind of not picking up. So it may be that you have to alter some desktop entries and put them in your local share applications folder to actually have them recognized and picked up. Or it just may be a bug while I'm doing a video, who can tell. But I'll put links to, I mean, I've closed the flipping window now, so I've got a keyboard shortcut for that. So, hang on. So, Emacs app launcher. There we go, Sebastian Way. So this is the one, and again, it's one of the contributors is David Wilson from System Crafters. Does some excellent videos. So it's going to be good stuff. Easy to install, but it said it's not a Melpa. Are a couple of issues with some things not showing up, but overall it's picking up every application pretty much on the system with a few exceptions. And I think it's a great replacement for this. I think it's a great replacement for that is using just make sure that app launcher, that interface compared to that is a lot easier, because just press the keyboard shortcut, this comes up, tweaks, bang, launches it, versus you're working here, you want to launch an application, taken away from your stuff, and then you're back. And so if you're launching a lot of applications, calculator, this is a really big visual distraction going in and out of that huge desktop mode. And it's really not needed. So it's just something I've been looking to replace, and I haven't found a good application launcher that worked. The closest I found was the Arc menu extension, but I don't like using GNOME extensions. So having something in Emacs is absolutely awesome. And as I said, I'll try and do a bit of work on creating a pop-up menu. As I said, like this, so Control-XE. So you can see here, this is the pop-up menu. If I hide the undecorated. Let's just uncomment that. You'll see this is how it would look normally as a GNOME window. It would have a thing like that, and that's kind of not really what you'd want from a sort of application launcher. It's kind of looks a bit shit, really. So actually having it undecorated and removing the title bar is an improvement, but I'd have to sort of might be nice to have some kind of border or something, because as you can see, when it's over something the same color, you can't really see it that well. So that's all for now. I'll put links to all this under the video, and I'll definitely check out the Emacs app launcher, which, as I said, is using code from the council package, and it does its job using XDG to actually find the desktop files and launch them. And it's really nice, super simple, got all the behavior you want. App launcher, run an application, launches it, and then hides itself. That's exactly what you want. And I said it'd be nice to extend this to actually be able to have a little frame come up so we can launch stuff, but that's something I'll have to look into. So that's all for now, and I'll put links to everything under the video.